Let's bring in CNN chief national correspondent and anchor of Inside Politics, John King, and CNN senior political commentator and former senior advisor to President Obama, David Axelrod. He is, of course, host of The Axe Files. It is great to have you both on the morning after key primary elections. Let's just get your takeaways, top line. John King, let's start with Kansas. How surprised are you?
Surprised, I guess, in some ways, but I think, look, the pillar of a democracy is you're supposed to listen to the people. Common sense conservatives in the middle of America essentially said to the Republican politicians looking state by state to ban abortion, whoa, slow down. Slow down. We've seen polling for a long time that a majority supported Roe v. Wade. This is not Kansas saying, we want to allow all abortions. This is Kansas saying we disagree with the Supreme Court and we want the politicians to slow down and listen to us. Let's have a nuanced, reasonable, compromised debate about this. It also is proof in a primary election, a lot of people turned out. John, the Democrats believe this will help them in November, that this will motivate voters. If you look at the vote, especially in the suburbs, the Kansas City, Kansas area, the Topeka area, there's no question people turned out. Are Republican women especially who might be inclined to vote Republican in the fall because they're mad about inflation or they're not impressed with Joe Biden's performance, might they come back now? Open question, but this was a shot to the politicians to stop and listen to the people.
What do you think, David?
Well, I agree with John. I think turnout is the big word here. You look at a state like Michigan, for example, where there's a very competitive or important, at least, governor's race. The Republicans nominated a candidate yesterday who is ardently anti-abortion rights. There is an initiative on the ballot, an issue on the ballot in the fall that would enshrine abortion rights in the Constitution of Michigan. That could change the contours of that race. So, look, Democrats have a lot of headwinds going into this election. The economic headwinds, general sour mood in the country, president's approval ratings are low, but this is something that could really alter the dynamic to the point where it may not be as bad as Democrats feared.
Look, and we should say that doesn't necessarily change the trajectory of the House of Representatives, right, John King? But one of the dynamics we did see, particularly in Arizona, is these election deniers winning these close partisan primaries. We haven't declared these races, but they seem to be in pole position. We saw Chris Kobach pulling it out as Attorney General in Kansas for the Republican nominee. Does that also create a potential problem for Republicans in terms of motivating, the center to stop the far right? Or do you think those headwinds will push some of these folks into office?
I think that's a defining question, actually, John, heading into November in swing states like Arizona. Georgia Republicans essentially told Donald Trump and his election lies to go away. When Georgia Republicans said, we're going to keep the establishment Republicans, the people who said no to Donald Trump, we won't help you cheat. That's Georgia Republicans' verdict. In Arizona, it appears to be something different. So the Republican Party's in a bit of a mess here. But Joe Biden won Arizona. People talk about the shifting of Arizona. Axe knows Arizona quite well. Are Democrats going to succeed in winning the governorship, keeping the Senate seat, winning statewide office? That would be a big shift in American politics if Democrats that quickly make gains in a state that had been Republican for a long time. It's an open question, but if you have a slate of election deniers, it certainly gives Democrats, a unified focus, whether it's the Secretary of State's race, the Senate race, or the race for governor.
I'll tell you, I've said this before, but I think if the Democrats retain the Senate this year, Donald Trump will be the most valuable player for the Democratic Party because he has nominated candidates in Georgia, in Arizona, in Pennsylvania who are vulnerable to Democrats, even in a very difficult year. And so I'm sure there are a lot of Republicans who have some heartburn about that.
David, sure. Congress has actually been doing stuff. Have you noticed?
Yeah, it's weird.
They've achieved some things in a bipartisan fashion, no less.
Yes.
Is this real life?
Well, it is for the people like the people who are going to benefit from the burn pit bill. It is real life for them, and that's really what we should keep focused on. But, Joe Biden has been attacked and ridiculed by a lot of people for his belief that perhaps there could be bipartisan action on a series of things. Well, now that is coming to fruition. And, the question is whether it will redound to his benefit or not.
Well, I think that's the key question. Looking at this list, I mean, the CHIPS Act, infrastructure, postal reform, the Burn Pit, the PACT Act, Emmett Till anti-lynching law. I mean, on and on and on. Some major bipartisan accomplishments. How come you think this has not benefited Joe Biden in the polls? It shows that you can govern from the center. There's some indication of progress, but he is under 40%. Where's that disconnect?
Well, I think there are three reasons for it. The first is the aforementioned economy. The fact that we have this huge problem with inflation has colored people's attitudes about the direction of the country. The second is he himself and his administration set such high expectations, the New Deal, the new FDR, and so on, that really sizable accomplishments now seem like compromises that are less than they really are. So he's done himself. And the third, John, is just performative. It's not about performance in office. It's about performance in front of the camera. And, you know, the president is not stellar in front of cameras now. He appears old to a lot of people. That has hurt him. But the fact is the record is really, really impressive.
Debate in in a New York House race last night that had an incredibly interesting moment. It was hosted, by the way, by our dear friend of the show,
Errol
Lewis. And this is what happened when the candidates were asked if Joe Biden should run for re-election.
Should President Biden run again in 2024?
Yes.
Mr. Nadler.
Too early to say. It doesn't serve the purpose of the Democratic Party to deal with that until after the midterms.
Ms. Maloney.
I don't believe he's running for re-election.
John King, what do you think?
Interesting to me that the younger candidate, the next generation Democrat trying to break through, is the one who said yes, because that is the piece of the party that would like generational change. They would like Mr. Nadler and Congresswoman Maloney to step aside as well. There's this festering energy among younger, especially on the progressive side of the Democratic Party, saying, "Please get out of the way. No disrespect. Thank you for your service. We want our generation to come forward." Jerry Nadler's right. This is a conversation Democrats would be best to put off till after the midterms. To David's point about communicating. If you're trying to communicate good things, you don't want to be talking about distracting things. But you had Congressman Phillips of Minnesota say last week he didn't think Biden should run. Now you have this coming up in a debate in New York, so it will be part of the Democratic conversation. I've been at this a long time, and David was a reporter before he was a strategist. Democrats often have trouble communicating and keeping their focus. The infighting, the infighting is one of the things that has undermined them. That list you showed, John. Think about the lack of ability in Washington to get things done in recent years because of polarization. It's an impressive list, but Democrats promised the moon, stars, and beyond when they won those 2 Georgia Senate seats. And so they've delivered maybe just the moon here, and there's still a lot of anxiety in the Democratic Party. It's also hard to break through to voters at a time they're exhausted after COVID, and then still in COVID, and then getting hit with inflation.
So there's your message. The moon is good.
We have the moon. Don't worry about the stars. I want to just return, though, and get your take on Maloney's comment, because it seemed like a classic Washington gaffe, right? Telling the truth out loud unintentionally.
Yeah. I have no idea why she did that. Maybe she felt that she was identifying herself with the younger voters who want older politicians to move on. But she's up in years herself. I'm not sure that was a very helpful message.
No. Certainly not for the Biden administration. Gentlemen, John King, David Axelrod, thank you very much.